Hey Nat, how you going?
I'm good, Sammy. How are you, my love?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Welcome back to another episode, everyone. Nat, do you ever stop to think that maybe we're not completely in charge of our own body and our mind? Like there's something else going on there, right? Because inside every single one of us lives a trillions of tiny little microbes, and I like to call them my microbial overlords because these guys can actually influence what we're craving, how our immune system responds, and maybe even help us to feel calm or anxious depending on what's going on down there. So I believe, Nat, that these guys are the true influencers of the world because I actually think they're holding like a meeting every afternoon without inviting me, and somehow they managed to vote on chocolate. I don't know what that's going on down there, but like, do you agree with
Uh,
me?
yeah, 100%. So many of our little gut bugs just love sugar.
Yes, they do. They
So
do.
segueing into that, today we are so excited that here on the Young Anxiety Compass we're finding out just how much influence these tiny microbes really have. Are they simply helping us digest our food, or are they also communicating with our brain and shaping our stress response and even influencing anxiety? We talk so much about the gut, don't we, Sammy?
We do. We are gut lovers. We love that conversation. But joining us
Yes.
today is someone who has spent years immersed in this fascinating world. Rebecca Edwards is a director of education at Biome Australia. She's a naturopath. She is also one of Australia's leading voices in microbiome research. And today we're going to be talking probiotics, psychobiotics, the gut brain connection, and what the science is actually telling us about these trillions of tiny little organisms that are living inside us. I'm so excited to have you here today, Rebecca. Welcome to the Anxiety Compass.
Oh,
Welcome,
thank you.
Rebecca.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And I just love, Sammy, your description of your microbial overlords. I love it. I love it.
It's really
It's so science fiction.
I know. I feel like there was a really
Really
formal
is.
entry. We normally pretty chill, but I wanted to really introduce you in a more formal way because you are pretty amazing at what you do. And yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really excited that you've come onto the podcast today. You've
Oh,
been on,
Rebecca,
you
you've
were on my
spent,
previous one, so
yeah, exactly.
we've done this before. But can I call you Beck or is it Rebecca? Do you
Oh,
prefer
either. I've
either?
been called everything.
Okay.
okay,
Oh, well, I'll call
we'll
you
call you
everything.
back.
Yeah. Look, I lived in the UK for a long time, and they don't use Beck as a diminutive of Rebecca. So in the UK they called me Bex. And
Oh,
then
Oh,
I
that's what
yes.
I
lived
call my sister,
Yeah,
Bex.
and then I
Yeah.
lived in the US and they also don't use Beck, but they called me Becca.
Oh,
So I
Becca.
have been
Rebecca.
Rebecca, Beck. My mum calls me Becky. I've been Bex. I've been Becca. So honestly, what if it comes from Rebecca, I will probably answer to it.
Okay, cool. Let's call it.
Fair
We'll
enough.
come up with various
Yeah.
names throughout the podcast.
Yeah, how many different derivatives can we make of your name
I know
today?
because then I have an Indian friend who calls me Reb as well. So
Oh, wow.
Oh,
it's all
Okay.
over the place.
That's new. All right. Well, we'll see what comes up throughout the podcast.
yeah.
Yes.
Beck, you've spent years educating practitioners around the world. We want to know what made bacteria become your thing that you're doing
The
in the
bacteria lady.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That feels like such a big question for what is kind of a microbial, microscopic topic. And I guess I've always loved educating on the human body. And I spent a lot of my career working as a lecturer and academic, teaching students of naturopathic and nutritional medicine. And I found that what I loved, I used to lecture in kind of all aspects of the degree course in various parts around the world. But what I loved more than anything was kind of the anatomy and physiology and pathology units. And I found that it was really the whole way that we tell stories about the human body and how it works is ultimately what really called to me. And the
Mm.
more I drove myself to learn about the body and how it works, the more I understood that, honestly, this is going to get all philosophical here. The meaning of life really comes from the lining of the gut. And then
Oh, I
what's
love that.
happening on the lining of the gut, you are hosting your trillions of microbial overlords. I'm just going to borrow that, Sammy.
I love
So
it.
it's without this amazing collection of these little interlopers who live in us and on us, we wouldn't be able to maintain homeostasis. And I guess ultimately that's always the messaging that I've built all of my educational stories around. What is homeostasis? What is our body trying to do? But more importantly, from a pathology perspective, where and as a practitioner, where is our patient deviating from homeostasis and how do we support her to come back into homeostasis? And it's amazing how often asking that question brought me back to the gut lining and therefore to the microbes who live there. So it was just a kind of this progressive honing inwards and inwards and inwards that led me to what I
Yeah.
think is the answer.
I always think of you know how they do the video of you and then they just zoom in and
Yeah,
zoom
yeah,
in
yeah.
and zoom in until they get to the tiny little atoms and then they split the atoms and they zoom in and it's like there's just this you don't I remember the first time I opened the textbook when I was studying nutrition and I was like, holy moly, like there are these tiny it just blows your mind that
Yeah.
what's underneath it all. It's just incredible. The human body is amazing. But for someone like, because most of our listeners probably aren't even aware what these little guys are doing, can you sort of introduce us to these tiny little ecosystems living inside us? So I call them microbial overlords, but there's some of them are our friends, let's be honest, because we can't
Yeah.
survive without them. But what are the bacteria actually doing in our gut? Like, what are they doing in there?
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there when you said some of them can't survive without us and we can't survive without some of them. Essentially, if we want to put it at its most base form, we are walking clouds of microbes.
A
We
big
are
cloud. Yeah.
essentially, if, say, a new alien life force hovered over planet Earth and was trying to get a read on the kind of creatures who inhabit our beautiful blue planet, they would actually read humans as some kind of human microbial hybrid that we
Mm.
are these walking meat skeletons covered in microbes. And microbes are microscopic forms of life, which are too small for us to see with the naked eye, or actually with any eyes, naked or not. But we have to look at them under microscopes. But they are each little microbe is a complete form of life, which means that it is capable of performing what we call metabolism, which essentially means they take fuel in and they produce what we call metabolites, or we could think of them as byproducts or waste products. So they're tiny, tiny, tiny little lives living on us and in us, eating things and producing things. And when we
Yeah.
use the word the microbiome, this is a word that, micro meaning obviously microscopic, biome referring to a collection of life. So the microbiome is the collection of microbes. But we're so used to talking about the word microbiome in the context of gut health. What I always want to remind people is you actually have microbes all over you.
Everywhere.
You have
Ew.
microbes, yeah.
That freaks. I say that to kids and they freak
Yes.
out. And I'm like, no,
No,
no, that's a good
no,
thing.
no, it is a good
We've
thing.
got more microbes than we do cells in our body,
Yes,
don't we? Like we
perfect. Yeah.
literally,
Freaking
yes.
me out.
Technically, you are more microbial than you are human because your
Mm.
microbes outnumber your human cells by, several numbers to one. There is not a single part of the human body that has been confirmed to be sterile. And that means you have microbes, not just in your gut, but you have microbes all over your skin, through your hair. Yes, you have a gut microbiome, but you have an oral microbiome. The collection of
Mm.
microbes in the mouth is fascinating. There's the
Mm.
vaginal microbiome that we're now beginning to learn a lot more about. There's a respiratory microbiome. There's an eyeball microbiome. There's an earwax microbiome. The
Could
microbiome
be going on forever
I know,
here.
behind on the skin behind your knees is different from the microbiome on the skin at your neck. You've got these
Oh.
different communities of microbes in every nook and cranny, in every cavity, in every liquid, lining every surface. And don't be
Mm.
freaked out about it. Embrace it.
No.
Just have to embrace it.
No.
Yeah, I often say to kids in my workshops, when I talk about microbes, I say the smells in your body, humans don't make smells. It's
That's
them
right.
doing teeny tiny
Yes.
little farts inside your body. And they go, ooh, they're stinky. It's like, that's what bad breath is. That's what, the gases that our body makes. It's
You're
Gross.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Smells come from microbial metabolism.
Our
Yeah.
microbial overlords doing teeny
Yeah.
tiny little farts. The ones we wanted to talk to, because the podcast is all about anxiety, the one we sort of wanted to hone in on more so are the psychobiotics. But
Yeah.
before we touch on the psychobiotics, Nat and I do a lot of
Yeah.
talking about the gut-brain highway. I call it the
Yeah.
gut-brain highway, but what do you call
Love
it?
that.
You call it more like a river, like a flowing thing, don't you?
Yeah, well, I spend
Yeah. I call it
a lot of my time communicating with healthcare professionals. So I don't get to kind of engage in all of these fun little stories as much as I used to. So I will very boringly refer to it as the gut-brain microbiota axis. But I think the
Yeah.
gut-brain highway is much more fun and
Yeah.
definitely gives that visual that this is a significant roadway and it's going in both directions.
What do
You
you
know,
call it, Nat?
100%. Well, I've always called it the highway.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That
But we
rather
were
than calling
saying
it, as
highways
a
like,
practitioner, I call it the gut brain axis. But when I'm talking to the people in front of me, I call it the highway. And that's one thing we really want you to talk about, Beck, is does the brain control the gut or is the gut talking back?
well, that is probably the existential question, isn't it? I see.
Oh,
I want to introduce a new player in this relationship. We're so often talking about the gut and the brain, but I want to point out it's actually a thruple that we need to be discussing here. It's actually
oh,
the gut, the
oh,
brain,
thruffles.
and the microbiota.
Yeah.
Because the microbiome, I really want to recognize it as being separate from the gut. That, the gut we can think of as the physical structure, and the microbiome is who lives there. So
mm,
I want to add another dimension to this relationship and
yeah,
talk about how it's not just the gut and the brain affecting each other, but it's the gut affecting the microbiome affecting the gut, the brain affecting the microbiome affecting the brain affecting the gut affecting the brain. They're all kind of going round in a complex,
Oh.
relationship dynamic conversation.
And like with
oh,
any throuple, is one of them more aggressive at times than other and take over? They want more love, or they're just really needy. Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably going to be the brain, right? Because
Yeah.
the brain is the biggest user of resources in the human body. It uses more sugar than any of the other organs. It uses more energy. Excuse me, there's a lot going on for the brain. So the brain is probably the dominant participant in this relationship, except that, like you said before, whereas we couldn't function without our microbes, yeah, the brain would not be able to do everything it needs to do without the regulating input of the microbiome. And we see that in human studies now, but we see it also in really interesting seminal adult studies as well. Sorry, some animal studies, which is something I don't really like talking about a lot. But in this particular study, no animals were harmed. But, published some years ago was a study which found that healthy rats, when given fecal content from humans with anxiety and depression, began to exhibit symptoms of anxiety and depression themselves. The
yeah.
only thing that had changed for these healthy rats was that they had been given the microbial content of the human digestive tract. And that was this kind of a light bulb moment in science that the composition, the kind of, combination of microbes that live in your gut can have a direct influence on your mental health. So that was this kind of huge moment that really illustrated, what? Gut health and microbiome balance. This is really significant.
Yeah.
And it really is. And it goes the other way. I mean, you're literally using fecal, what is it called? Fecal transplant in
Mm.
people who are unwell with a healthy
Yeah.
sample. And it's seeing the same thing, isn't it? Like
Still
an
so
improvement in
gross.
health.
So
Well,
gross,
yeah,
Nat.
see, and I think that's interesting, Sammy, your response to that. It's so gross because we've got this kind of innate response to
Oop.
anything to do with poo that's disgusting. But
Hey,
it's
I work with poo hats. I'm
yeah,
I'm all good for poo.
it's also, it is the oh gosh, so we're getting so deep here. It
Yeah,
is the source of
literally.
life in a way. Yeah, literally.
Mm.
And that, it goes right back to the story of birth and really the kind of essential seeding of the microbiome of a newborn baby. For a long time, we really thought it was the vaginal microbiome that was so significant. Now we know it's actually more likely to be the mother's rectal microbiome, which is providing
Oh,
the
Mm.
important foundation for this newborn baby's developing microbiome. And that this is why when babies are born, they're born, sunny side down, if you like, the face facing
yeah.
the perineum, so that
Yes.
essentially their first exposure is to that perineal and rectal microbiome. It's also the
Yeah.
reason why during the process of birth, the stimulation of the baby coming down the birth canal will often also cause release of some fecal material. That's by design. That's meant to happen.
It's, isn't it? I mean, yeah, our bodies are amazing and it knows what to do. If we stop getting out of the way and intervening, you know, these natural
Yeah.
processes just happen.
And then I often think like it's gross at the thought of it, but like babies born cesarean, wouldn't it just make sense to rub fecal stuff on them when
Well,
they
Well, they
come
do.
out?
Yeah.
believe it or not, this is actually kind of being very gently investigated in research at the moment. That
Yes.
should there be a process of actually taking some of the maternal rectal microbiome and applying it in some way to babies. Now, I don't think it's progressed to human clinical trials yet, but I know that the hypothesis is being examined in those research circles. So
Rub it
this is
on them.
definitely a watch that space conversation.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Because don't they at the moment, if they are born by cesarean, they actually have been taking a swab from the vagina and rubbing that on the baby.
Mm.
Haven't they been doing that?
Yeah, I
I
mean, I
remember
know
reading
that
that.
that has been definitely discussed, and some birthing mothers have chosen to do that themselves, but there's
Right.
no kind of hospital policy or no kind of health administration has put that into place as standard protocol. We don't
Yeah.
we honestly don't have the evidence for that being beneficial yet, or if
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all.
Whether the
And again, I think it's another area of research, but at the moment
Yeah.
it's yeah,
mm.
not
But
definitely not an
obviously,
evidence-based
Yeah.
intervention.
no. And
Yeah.
obviously, as you said, it's advanced our understanding, and it's more coming from that
Mm.
Yeah,
fecal rather than the
yeah.
vagina.
But
Yeah.
doesn't that make everyone kind of freak out a little bit?
A
It's
little bit.
ew,
Yeah.
poo. You can't
Yeah.
get poo on
I
babies. And it's
know.
like actually
So
babies are actually supposed to get poo on them.
yeah,
Yes.
I like that. I'm all good with the poo
Yeah.
as long as it's, yeah, doing beneficial
As
things.
long as it's
So
where it's meant to be.
yeah,
Where it's meant to be.
exactly.
Yeah,
So going
exactly.
back to the psychobiotics, because that's sort of where I'm
Hang
hearing
on,
a lot
sorry.
about.
Can I just interrupt? I just,
Yeah.
before we move on to the next subject, but can you just explain? Because we do talk about the gut-brain axis, we talk about the highway. For our listeners, can you explain exactly what that is?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
a
Yeah.
physical structure in
Yes,
the body that is connecting both?
that's a really
Yeah.
good point
Good point,
because
Nat.
we don't want to give the impression that the microbes that live in your gut are actually traveling to your brain because they're not. So it's more that they are sending messages via that highway. So if you think about it, like, do you remember those? Well, probably your listeners won't remember, but have you had your grandma tell you about in old school department stores when the cashiers would have the kind of shuttle system above their heads that they would put the money into, and it would be whizzed around the building and up
Oh,
to head office, etc., and things like that. I think this was really popular in like the 1950s and 60s, and I think some department stores had it a little bit later. But so there was like this system of connected pipes with an air highway above their heads, and they would put the day's takings or empty the till every hour or so and put it into this chute that would then whiz the money around. That's more what our microbial highway is doing, that messages are coming from the gut microbiome and being whizzed up to the brain where they can have an influence. And there's a couple of different kind of, again, hypotheses or theories about how this is working. So let's come back to the contents of the gut microbiome. We have millions of different strains of bacteria that we know about right now. And also, I want to point out, just reflect on something that you said before. Every human on this earth has a unique gut microbiome.
Like a
Your
fingerprint, isn't it?
Exactly. It is as unique
yeah.
to you as your fingerprint. So this means that no one else on Earth has exactly the same combination of microbes as you do. And your microbiome is always changing as well. It changes dynamically in response to so many things that we're still learning about. We know that the most significant influence on your microbiome is your diet. and that you can, you can significantly change the composition of your microbiome with every meal, that
Mm.
everything that comes into your mouth is providing fuel for different microbes. And what we're looking for, because we know that there is so much diversity in microbiome composition around the world globally, we are not looking for everyone to have the same microbiome. Rather, we know that the research shows us that the more diverse your microbiome, the more different types of individual microbes you have living inside you, the more this correlates to good health and especially good mental health. So the
Yes.
more microbes you have living in you, the more different types, the less likely you are to experience things like, mental unwellness, emotional irregularity, sleeping difficulties, and digestive issues as well. And actually, a lot more, a lot of kind of immune diagnoses as well are linked to having a more diverse microbiome. So, this means that the more diverse your diet is, the more you are able to feed this colony of diverse microbes. And they're all producing, going back to what you said before, Sammy, they're all producing little farts or realistically probably little poops is probably what
Little
I'd call it.
little poofs.
Yeah, little
Yeah.
puffs of
A pop
what we
off.
would call metabolites. So let's say you eat a salad and you've got in that salad, you've got, say, some iceberg lettuce and some romaine lettuce, you've got some red capsicum, some yellow capsicum, you've got maybe some blueberries in there for a bit of color, you've got some avocado, you've got some red tomatoes and some black tomatoes because you thought they looked cool in the supermarket. You've made a dressing with some olive oil and lemon juice and garlic, and you've sprinkled, I'm making myself hungry. You've
I was
sprinkled,
about to say that. I'm
Me
really
too.
hungry now.
I know,
Mm.
you've sprinkled in some salt and some pepper. You are now feeding about a dozen different types of microbes in there
You're feeding their
because
families.
yeah, exactly. You're giving them the right food to feed their families. And
Mm.
what's really interesting is that even different foods of the same kind of species, so for example, your red capsicum and your yellow capsicum, they will be feeding different microbes because it is the polyphenols or what gives those capsicum their color, which is actually the favorite food for different types of bacteria.
Mm.
So after you've eaten that salad,
Cravings.
you will be growing the families of many different kinds of bacteria. Whereas maybe
Aw.
you're having a day where, everything is wrong with the world and you're very stressed and you go home and you just eat a big bowl of ice cream for dinner. There
Mm.
are fewer substrates in that ice cream to feed a variety of microbes. So your microbiome will look a little bit different after that big tub of ice cream than it would after your salad. I'm absolutely not judging anyone for eating a big bowl of ice cream for dinner.
No.
If that's what you need to
Mm.
do, that's what you need to do on some days. But
Yum.
it's the,
But then I ask Beck, are
yeah.
you choosing that or are your microbes
Well,
choosing
yes,
that
that's
option?
right.
Yes.
Because if you think about what might be influencing your decision to eat the ice cream, you might be feeling really stressed, really worn out, like you have decision fatigue. You've got nothing in you to choose to make a lovely, colorful salad. And again, we know that that kind of stress, anxiety, cognitive fatigue can again be influenced by the composition of the microbiome. So this
Mm.
really comes back to it being a two-way street, that yes, your brain is influencing your microbiome, but your microbiome is also influencing your mood, your decision making, your behavior, and yeah, your cravings.
Cravings.
We're
Yeah.
getting back to how they're
Fascinating.
actually affecting your brain. So they're consuming all of these foods that we're feeding them. They can also kind of replicate. This is going to get really creepy as well. Replicate within the mucus lining of the digestive tract. So if you have a thicker layer of mucus covering the lining of your digestive tract, and this sounds gross, but it's actually really important.
I've got
Mucus
my
is
gross face on.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm stuck in gross
Ah,
face. I'll
I've got my
smile.
sciencey,
I love
nerdy, fascinated
Sammy, I
face
love
on.
that you're fine with poo, but you draw the line at mucus.
Hey, I've got teenage boys. Everything's
Yeah,
gross.
yeah, I know. So if you have a nice thick protective layer of mucus in your digestive tract, you're actually providing a nice kind of protective home for your microbiome. So they can actually kind of nestle into that sticky mucus and be really, really happy in there, growing their little colonies of little microbial families. So
I
what they're
feel like a little
doing, yeah,
mother and I'm like
I know,
nurturing
exactly.
my little families down
Yeah.
there.
I love how now they've switched from
Yeah.
being your overlord to your children.
My kids. Yeah.
So they're producing what we call metabolites, or what Sammy calls little puffs of farts, and they are substances which are being released by the bacteria after they have fed on the fibers, the polyphenols, the different structures within your food. And these metabolites, we know that there are many different types of them, and we don't always know what each individual type of microbe is producing, but we do have a good understanding that there are certain benefits associated with different types of metabolites. The one that we've studied the most is a group of metabolites called short chain fatty acids.
Yeah.
And there are several of those which have had a special scientific attention that we understand a little bit more. So there's one called butyrate or butyric acid, which is a short chain fatty acid, which is associated with reduced levels of inflammation, improved immune function, and various other benefits. There's another one called lactate, which similarly is associated with kind of good things. So we know that
Mm.
we want to kind of be feeding the kind of microbes that produce these beneficial short chain fatty acids. So
Yeah.
those short chain fatty acids themselves are really likely to be having an influence on your overall wellness, including your mental wellness. Because
Yes.
something that I'm sure you've discussed, many times before is the link between anxiety and other mental health presentations and inflammation.
Yeah,
And
definitely. We've
yeah,
definitely talked
Yeah.
on that. And I find like, and I don't know if you find this in clinic, but most of the time, like Nat, most of the time when people come in and they talk about probiotics, it's usually I've got to, I've been sick and I need to improve my immunity. They often don't
Yeah. Or I've
realize that.
taken an antibiotic, so
Yeah. And
I've got
so
to
I
take a
guess that's where
probiotic.
I wanted to sort of educate people on what psychobiotics are. Like I've actually got the activated probiotics, is it
biome
Lift?
lift. Yeah, biome
Yes,
lift.
I've
Yeah.
got that one for
Yeah.
myself. And yeah, I guess it's more what is this psychobiotics? Like what does it actually
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that term psychobiotic is, I don't know, I have a love-hate relationship with it
Oh yeah,
because
going by
I
that
I
head.
definitely, I love the kind of it's really catchy and it's really easy to say and it's really fun to say and it sounds a
I
bit like a
like
movie.
it. Psychobiotic.
Um, but I also feel like I don't know, I mean, it's a psycho prefix telling you that it's going to, turn you into
Make
a
you psycho.
psycho. I don't know. Yeah. So I don't, yeah,
American Psycho.
yeah, I know.
Take this
Uh,
to go crazy.
so
Oh,
the way that I tend to refer to these kind of probiotics in a more formal setting would be gut-brain axis probiotics.
Oh,
And
yes.
they
yeah.
are, to kind of give them a broad definition, they are specific strains of probiotic which have been found to confer benefits to mental and emotional health. So
Hmm.
and again, this comes back to that whole idea that we link innately the microbiome with gut health. But we need to be adding in this extra dimension that gut health equals mental health equals gut health. Probiotics, which influence your gut health, are also really going to have an influence on your mental health. But some specific strains will have more of a benefit than others. And that really opens then the really important conversation around what do we mean by specific strains. And what I would
Yep.
say would be that the world of probiotics is just as big and just as various as the world of, say, pharmaceutical medicines or the
Oh,
world of herbal
we
medicine.
get lost in it,
Yeah.
don't we, Nat? Like we're
Yeah.
nutritionists. I don't even know how to pronounce half of them, and I look
Yeah.
like a goober when I've got clients in front of me because I'm like,
Look, the
I don't know
key
what that
is
is.
just pronounce it confidently. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
No one will
That's the way
know.
I do
You
it.
just
So
confidently pronounce it.
Just
until you
own
go
it.
to a
Just go for
workshop
it.
and they pronounce it
Absolutely. Yeah.
differently, and you're like, oh, I've been saying it wrong all these
But
years.
yeah, but do you know what? So I go to a lot of like high level microbiology conferences all around the world. I listen to the most intelligent, dorky scientists who have literally discovered different microbes and are literally doing the research we will all be referencing for the next 100 years. They all pronounce them differently. So
Yeah.
Okay,
don't
I'm just
don't
gonna
get
make mine
hung up
up.
on it. Don't get hung up on the pronunciation. Honestly, just go with confident.
I'll
But
give them
Yeah.
nicknames.
yeah. Or give them nicknames.
Yeah.
So if you can you imagine, one way that I kind of describe the importance of knowing your individual probiotics is, for most people who listening out there who I'm sure they've had the experience of walking into a pharmacy and standing at the pharmacy counter and asking the pharmacist for help and saying something like, I've got a headache. Do you have anything that could help me? Can you imagine if the pharmacist said, oh, yeah, you need for a headache? You know what you need? You need medication. Have you got any
Mm,
medication at home? Just go home and take some medication. Just open
mm,
your medicine cabinet. If you've got a
mm.
Take
bottle,
whatever
you've
you
got a
got.
bottle of
Yeah,
medicine,
whatever you
whatever
got,
you've
just
got,
shove it in.
yeah, and that probably a higher dose, the better, and
Yep.
just take your medicine. That's what you need. But
Mm,
obviously, you would need to know, well, what type of
mm,
medication? What is it doing in the body? How is it going to relieve the headache? Is there evidence that that medicine will relieve the headache? Is it right for me and my circumstances? And this is how we need to think about probiotics as well, that for so long, people have really thought about them as though they're just one thing. And oh, my naturopath, my nutritionist recommended this particular probiotic for acne or eczema. I've got a probiotic at home. I'm going to use that up first. So, she's
yep.
got probiotics. Let me go and finish probiotics. But we really want to get the message across that every individual strain of probiotic bacteria is like its own medicine or like its own, individual vitamin or mineral, and it has its own little things that it does. So you need to take the right probiotic for the outcome you need that probiotic to give you. And you need to know that it's been researched in well-conducted human clinical trials. It's been shown to have that outcome and that we have an understanding of what it's doing. So if we think about the Biome Lift probiotic, which is the psychobiotic that I work with,
Psycho.
that's right. The gut brain axis product that I work with, Biome Lift, that's a combination of 4 specific strains, which has now been through 3 human randomized controlled trials, where that specific combination of those 4 strains has been given to hundreds of patients, and matched groups of patients have been given a placebo product. So they've both taken this tiny little white capsule once a day. They don't know what they're taking because this is a randomized trial, and a placebo controlled trial. So the participants, all they know is that they're taking this one little capsule once a day. They don't know if they've got the real stuff with the probiotics or the fake stuff, which is just a small white capsule. And
Mm.
then the researchers also don't know, which group A or group B, who's got the probiotic, who's got the placebo, don't know, but they give everyone the same kind of combination of psychological tests. And they
Mm.
do this combination of tests at what we call baseline before anybody starts taking anything. And then usually, depending on the structure of the trial, after about 3 weeks, they'll give them the same tests. Then after another 3 weeks, they'll give them the same tests. Then sometimes they might kind of test them again in another 3 weeks, or the trial might end after about 6 weeks. Then everybody finishes taking their probiotic or their placebo, but then the researchers test them again with the same test 3 weeks later. And that then lets them see. So whenever they're doing these tests, they're coming up with kind of standardized scores for things like feelings of depression, feelings of anger, feelings of hostility, feelings of hopelessness about the future. They're asking them how well they're sleeping. Are they having trouble falling asleep? Are they having trouble staying asleep? Do they feel rested in the morning?
Very thorough.
Asking them very thorough about their
Mm.
cognitive process, their mental fatigue, all of these things, their anxiety levels. And then they measure that number and compare it each time. And this then lets us see that taking this specific combination of probiotics that we have in Biome Lift has created a really big difference between the 2 groups, that those who took the probiotic, they had an improvement in their feelings of anger and hostility and depressed mood and cognitive fatigue, and they slept better. And what was interesting was that they continued to improve even 3 weeks after they'd finished taking the probiotic. And
Yeah,
Wow.
that brings us
that's
back
amazing.
to our original question
Big,
here, which is how are they
big
actually working?
advantage. Yeah.
And they're working by, having this overall long-term anti-inflammatory immunomodulatory impact, that they're producing their little puffs of poos or whatever, what we want to call the
Farts, not
metabolites,
poos.
farts, poos, whatever. The short chain fatty acid beneficial metabolites, which are interacting with the lining of the gut to reduce inflammation, which are doing other things as well. So we know that some of these strains are able to do things like interact with tight junction proteins. Tight junction proteins are little proteins that are found between enterocytes. Enterocytes are the cells that line the gut. So between all of these little cells, yeah, they've got these little kind of connectors that hold them together. And some of
Yeah.
these probiotics actually talk to these connecting proteins, and this reduces what we might call leaky gut or intestinal hyperpermeability, which then reduces the ability of inflammatory compounds to flow from the gut into the bloodstream, where they trigger more inflammation. We
I
know
love
that
this.
it's so cool.
Yeah,
They
Some of
should
it's
these,
turn it into
amazing.
like a cartoon series. I would
I
totally
know.
I
watch
know. I
that.
literally can
Yeah,
see it
you're
all in my
picturing it, right?
Let's
mind.
talk.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey
yeah.
guys, I'm
Yeah,
here to help out.
exactly. I'm going to encourage you all to hold hands, work together. But they're
Yes.
doing more. It gets even cooler. So some of them can interact with goblet cells. Like goblet cells have the best name of any cell in the
I
human
love
body.
it.
I
I picture
right.
Harry
Yeah.
I
Potter.
agree.
I know Harry Potter cells. So these are cells which kind of are stationed around the lining of the gut, which produce mucin proteins. And these mucin proteins, when they're released onto the gut lining, they help to form that protective mucus. So these probiotics will chat to the goblet cells, encourage them to produce more mucin, which then means the digestive tract can produce more of this protective mucus, which then allows again a more diverse and healthy microbiome to just happily munch away in that protective mucus blanket, if we want to think about it like that. But
Yeah.
then there's more going on
God,
too.
next chapter.
I know, I know. So we've got a whole series now, a little science fiction fantasy cartoon going on. So some of these strains can also be, I don't want to use the word bullies. I want to use the word maybe assertive, but they can actually kind of crowd out and reduce the presence of pathogenic microbes, what we might think of as bad bacteria. So there's
Bad
been a lot
guys.
of connecting between the presence of certain bad microbes with enhanced, mental health symptoms. And some of these strains are able to suppress the colonization of Klebsiella bacteria and E. coli bacteria. And this means that they can really overall improve the health of the microbiome and reduce the presence of microbes which might have been stirring things up for some
There
Oh,
you go.
patients. But there's
That's
more.
fascinating.
They've got another
oh
chapter
Oh,
more to go.
God.
next chapter.
I know. Some of these metabolites can also interact with the vagus nerve. The vagus
Yes.
nerve,
We've
kind of
talked
we
about
Mm,
the
talk
vagus
about. Yep,
nerve. Yeah.
absolutely. So
yeah.
the vagus nerve is like the physical highway, if we want to go back to our highway analogy. It's,
Yeah.
this very long nerve in the human body, which runs right from the central nervous system, from the brain, right down the thorax, right down the abdomen, and it lies very, very closely adjacent to the digestive tract. Now, some of these microbes, these, beautiful probiotics, they can produce metabolites which can stimulate peristalsis. And I'm sure your
Mm.
listeners know peristalsis. It's the rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the digestive tract, which moves your food through and moves your poo out of your body. And the thing is that, your digestive tract is actually a really strong tube of muscle. So this contraction can be quite significant. The physical contraction of the digestive tract of the large intestine can actually stimulate the vagus nerve. And when the vagus nerve is stimulated, it actually kind of carries that stimulation back to the hypothalamus, the control center of the
Yeah.
brain.
All up
And
here.
yeah, and that it
Yeah.
promotes this feeling of well-being and safety and social
Oh,
comfort. So there's so
gosh.
many cool things to talk
So
about here.
many.
It's,
I
We could
know.
be here forever. We'll have like a 3 hour podcast.
yeah, we
My
totally
main
could.
Oh, yeah.
question though, like I don't know, were
Oh,
you going to say
yeah.
something, Nat? You go.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, this is such a fascinating subject, and I love that we're learning more and more that scientists are out there exploring, the how far we can go with, protecting and, our microbiome. What I want to know, because, in anxiety, sometimes you put on medications. Do you think there will ever come a time when doing this sort of work, on restoring the microbiome for mental health, like anxiety, will ever replace medication?
It's
Like
a
on the
really,
whole, I
yeah,
know there's
yeah,
some times when
yeah, for
if
sure.
they're
Yeah.
acute, but
Yeah.
yeah, do you think
Yeah.
it'll ever get to that
So
point?
I think it's, in order for a healthcare system to recommend a particular intervention, there needs to be certain levels of evidence on that intervention. There needs to be a body of tier one and tier two level evidence. We're still building that with probiotics. Where we're at in terms of, say, evidence on Biome Lift, there are now 3 published human randomized controlled trials. That's not tier one evidence yet. Tier one evidence is when we have publication of multiple meta-analyses and systematic reviews.
Yeah.
And what a
Right.
meta-analysis is when you've got quite a large number of randomized controlled trials on a particular intervention, and then another group of researchers put all of those trials together, and then they analyze all of the statistics and outcomes from those trials together. And we don't have enough trials yet to make up what's
Yet.
required to create, yet exactly what's required to create tier one
Yeah.
evidence. So we're not at a state where it would be possible for a healthcare system to recommend an intervention because we don't have the evidence required for that.
Mm.
However, we absolutely have enough evidence for it to be an adjunct recommendation. And
Yeah, I
and
find that
yeah,
though in our clinic as nutritionists,
yeah,
quite often, like that's the difference between nutritionists and dietitians. We often go with things that there are some evidence out there, like it hasn't hit
yeah.
mainstream yet. And I find
No.
sometimes you watch the news like 3 or 4 years later, and they're like, discovered this. I'm like, we've been doing that for years
We've
in
been doing for
clinic.
years,
It's worked for
Exactly.
years.
And we need these visionaries to be actually even creating the stimulus to encourage funding into these initial clinical
Yeah.
trials. So
Yeah.
it's just because there isn't that body of evidence doesn't mean that something doesn't work. It just means we're still building it.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
Yeah.
beautiful thing about probiotics is that they are suitable to give alongside other interventions as well.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we can use Biome Lift in our patients who may be taking medication as well, because they're working on
Mm.
totally different pathways. They're going to different places. And the most important thing is that the probiotic is not going to interrupt the metabolism, the working of the
Yeah.
medication. And that
In
actually
a lot
brings,
of
sorry, go on.
cases,
Oh,
it
go on.
actually
Yeah.
even
Yes,
improves
yes,
the
yes, yes,
efficacy
yes,
of
absolutely.
medications.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that is something, kind of a point that I really wanted to make as well, actually, that, and you've probably heard this too. A lot of people will say things like, your microbiome is important for mental health because 90% of your gut, your body's serotonin is made in your gut.
Mm.
This is true, but that serotonin that is in your gut is not the same serotonin as in your brain. It is structurally the same, but it can't reach your brain because
Yeah.
that serotonin cannot cross the blood-brain barrier to enter your central nervous system. So
Ah,
gut-derived
okay.
serotonin will not have an influence on serotonin activity within your brain neuronal system, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's not beneficial for mental health. It comes back to that kind of peristalsis and vagus nerve stimulation. That
Mm.
one of the purposes of serotonin in your gut is to trigger muscle contraction and release. And so,
Yeah.
again, it's helping to maintain peristalsis, which is then helping to stimulate the vagus nerve, which is then helping to promote those feelings of well-being.
all all connected. And I often say, like
Yeah.
people that are listening that have anxiety and they're like, oh, I gotta go out and get this, it's gonna fix me. It's one part of the puzzle because there's also modern lifestyle with stress, processed foods. Like your diet plays a huge, we haven't even mentioned prebiotics, but it's only so much time that we
I
have. But
know.
and even taking antibiotics can completely annihilate your guts as well. And sleep is an important
Sleep.
factor as well. Like there's just so many factors, but I'm just being mindful of the time. I wanted to throw some rapid fire questions out there for you, and it's really hard to answer these quickly, but let's try our best.
All right.
But
Do you want to start?
do you want me to start? You start?
Yep.
Yeah, you
All
go
right.
ahead,
All right, Beck, and let's go. Do
Rebecca.
probiotics survive stomach acid?
Yes, most of them, if they are acid tolerant species, and especially if they have a microencapsulation on them. So,
Ooh.
yes, most probiotics you will find on the shelf have been trialed and shown to survive stomach acid.
Ooh.
Great.
Okay. How long, when someone starts taking a probiotic, how long do you think people will start to notice changes?
Depends what it is they're taking it for. If they're taking it for a part of the body that changes very quickly, like for example, the oral microbiome, they can notice results within a couple of days. If they're taking it for a part of the body which changes more slowly, for example, bone density, they would not notice anything until they have another DEXA scan, which may be anywhere up to a year
Oh,
away. But for things like IBS symptoms, you can see a reduction in things like bloating and abdominal pain within a couple of days.
Oh, there you go.
okay. Yeah. Do you have to take them forever, probiotics forever?
No, because they have this modulatory benefit, like we talked about with the Biome Lift,
Mm.
that even 3 weeks after those trial participants had finished taking their probiotic, they were still seeing improvement in their symptoms. So probiotics help by helping to regulate homeostasis, bring the body back into balance where it can look after itself. So no, you don't need to take them forever.
Oh, beautiful. Do they need to go in the fridge?
No, they don't. That's a myth.
I love it.
Uh-huh. Can you take them with antibiotics?
Yes, you can. It is also a myth that they need to be separated from antibiotics. You can take them in the same mouthful if you like. They are going to different places and they're doing different things. Antibiotics are designed to be absorbed as quickly as possible into your bloodstream. They will fight infection by traveling around your body in your blood. Probiotics never cross into your bloodstream. They stay in the gut. They protect your microbiome and reduce antibiotic side effects by working their way through your digestive tract. So, yes, you can take them together.
Do you know how many clients have asked
Perfect.
me that? Thank you for
Yes, I
that.
know.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna capture your voice and replay it.
I know, right?
Fermented foods versus a supplement probiotic.
Totally different things. Fermented foods are fermented. They contain products of fermentation. So it's not so much about the live microorganisms, it's about the acidic metabolites that they contain. This is why things like yogurt and sauerkraut taste sour because they are full of things like lactic acid and other acidic metabolites. They are full of the products of fermentation. If you want to take actual live microbes in a measured dose, you need to take a probiotic.
Ah,
Cool.
good one.
And another one, prebiotics or probiotics?
Different things again. Prebiotics are structures which act as substrates or fuel for probiotics or other beneficial bacteria. So essentially, think of it as the probiotics are the creatures, the prebiotics are their packed lunch. You can take prebiotics to enhance the presence of healthy bacteria in your own commensal microbiome. You take probiotics to make their way through your digestive tract, interacting with your own microbes, interacting with your digestive system, and improving, symptoms as per the clinical trials they've been involved in.
Gosh, this
It's
is my
fascinating.
brain's just going pew pew pew.
Oh, my nerdy self. I'm just so
I know.
excited.
I want to keep asking questions, but we're running out of time. How can people get a hold of you, Beck? Or more importantly, if they want more information on this or any of the products that you have?
Yeah, so I work for Activated Probiotics. Biome Australia is our parent company. Most people would know our number one brand, Activated Probiotics. We also have Activated Therapeutics, which actually does have a prebiotic, a synbiotic, a postbiotic, all the biotics, as well as a couple of other really cool things, which I'm loving working with at the moment. You can find us on Instagram. That's probably a great way to keep up with what we're up to. Come and follow Activated Probiotics and Activated Therapeutics on Instagram. You'll find really cool links to little pieces of knowledge, information about when we're running webinars and, speaking events and things like that. And yeah, we would love to meet some of your listeners out there.
Yeah, I'm sure they would love that. If someone only remembers one thing when buying a probiotic, what's that one thing that you would recommend they remember when they're out there? Because there's so many on the
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely.
it's just some of them are just BS, let's be
You
honest.
need to take the probiotic that has been proven to solve the problem you want to solve.
Yep.
Yeah. So if
Yep.
you want to take a probiotic for your acne, take a probiotic that has been clinically trialed for acne. If you want to take a probiotic for eczema, take a probiotic which has been clinically trialed for eczema. A good probiotic is good for what we know it's going to be good for.
Yeah. It's very
Amazing.
targeted therapy, isn't
Yeah,
it?
It is. It is.
absolutely.
Well, this has been really great, Beck.
Yeah.
Rebecca. I've loved having you on today. I'm sorry, my sister's name is Rebecca.
Yeah, no, go
I
for it.
often call her various things. I probably won't call you what I call her half the time.
Yeah,
Um,
sisters have special privileges there.
Special privileges. But yeah, no, we've spent a lot of time exploring one point on the anxiety compass. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but every point is a different thing pointing us at what anxiety could be. And those gut microbes could definitely be a reason why you're so anxious. So if there's one thing we hope you take away, listeners, it's this, that your gut isn't just digesting food, it's constantly communicating with your immune system, your nervous system, and your brain. And anxiety isn't always just about the thoughts in your head. Sometimes it's our biology quietly influencing. I love using the word influencing because they are our influences, right?
Yeah.
Just how safe or unsafe your body actually feels. So it doesn't mean that probiotics are a magic pill. Like, it's not going to be the magic pill that you might be looking for, but it does remind us that understanding anxiety often means looking beyond the mind and becoming curious about the whole body, the whole person, because every time we explore another point on the compass, Nat, we're going to be moving that little bit closer to our true north. And
We most certainly are.
that's where we feel calm and at peace and at homeostasis, which is what you were talking about at the beginning. So, do you have anything else to add, ladies?
Oh, I
No,
just love
I could
how
easily just talk.
Oh,
our microbiome has kind of moved from microbial overlords to kind of little children
I
to,
know.
just all of these little things that are hanging out inside us. So I love the visual that I hope your listeners are
I
left with.
really hope you come up with a cartoon show
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
that we
totally.
can
Yeah.
watch. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to this.
Overlords, children, influencers. There you
Yeah,
go.
yes, exactly. And now they're influencers. I mean, we are
Yeah.
in the Instagram era, right? So it makes sense
Yep.
to think of them as influencers.
Exactly. Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and we hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks,
See
Beck.
ya. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Beck.
Thanks for joining us on the Anxiety Compass. If you loved this episode, share it with a friend who needs a little laugh and a lot of calm. We'll see you in the next one. Keep following your true north. Disclaimer time. Sammy and Natalie may be clinical nutritionists, but we're not your personal doctors. What you hear is for learning and laughing, not diagnosing or prescribing. If things feel bigger than you, call your doctor or local support line or reach out to a qualified health professional. They've got your back too.